Good morning. Welcome to Wellesley College and the Albright Institute for Global Affairs annual dialogue, From Exodus to Action, Claiming Our Common Humanity in the Current Refugee Crisis. I am Joanne Murray, and along with my faculty co-director, Takis Metaxas, also professor of computer science, it is our honor to introduce to you the president of Wellesley College. Our campus is alive with leadership. You can feel it everywhere. Wellesley has, with a renewed sense, embraced its role and responsibility in higher education. We are a leader that advances and is committed to helping girls and women both at home and across the globe. This is in no small part due to the presence of Dr. Paula Johnson leading our campus beginning the fall of 2016. Oh, I'm not done. Oh, you're not done. She thought I was done, but I'm not done at all. President Paula A. Johnson is a respected and passionate leader, deeply committed to women and to sustainably improving their lives. She is recognized internationally as an innovator who has brought her broad range of experience as a researcher, educator, and expert in healthcare, public health, and health policy to bear in the effort to advance the well-being of women. Before coming to Wellesley, President Johnson founded and served as the inaugural executive director of the Connors Center for Women's Health and Gender Biology, as well as the chief of the Division of Women's Health at Brigham and Women's Hospital, a Harvard teaching hospital and one of the world's leading academic medical centers. Her vision for achieving a sustainable improvement in women's health is reflected in the Connors Center's unique approach to aspects of health throughout the lifespan. This model encompasses discovering how disease is expressed differently in women and men, integrating leading-edge research about women's health into the delivery of care, influencing health policy, addressing the health of women globally, and developing the next generation of leaders in the field of women's health through the innovative interdisciplinary education and working successfully across systems. The quality often associated with true leaders, as we all know, is that they can see what others cannot. With Dr. Johnson at the helm, she is inspiring all of us at Wellesley to see new possibilities and begin to enact these realities, realities that are allowing Wellesley to live into our mission in a renewed and robust manner. It is in this spirit, burgeoning with possibility, that I gratefully introduce to you today Wellesley's new leader, President Paula A. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne, and I'm glad I got it right the second time. Good morning to all of you, and welcome. Welcome to our students, our faculty, our staff, our returning alumni, our distinguished panelists and guests from around the world. Welcome to Wellesley College. Welcome to the Albright Institute's public forum, From Exodus to Action, Claiming Our Common Humanity in the Refugee Crisis. To our guests, let me extend my personal welcome. We are so glad, and I would say that's an understatement, that you could join us today. Wellesley College is the preeminent college for women and increasingly a global center for women's leadership, perfectly evidenced today by the Albright Institute. Wellesley's mission over the past 100 years, for over 100 years, has been to champion women's intellectual and social development and leadership, and the Albright Institute is actively helping us define what that leadership looks like in the 21st century. We are so very proud to host this public dialogue every year. And as the world grapples with a humanitarian crisis that at this very moment is affecting countless lives and destabilizing countries and governments on a global scale, I hope that this year's dialogue will be a call to action. The issues that we will explore here today could not be more timely, relevant, and tragically of such immense significance. When Professor Takis Metaxas, the faculty director of the Albright Institute, and Joanne Murray, the director of the Institute, came to talk with me in the fall about the symposium, the issues then were pressing. We were dealing and continue to deal with Syria and so many other places around the world. But they have taken on an even greater magnitude today, given the actions of the current administration. As we consider the refugee crisis, it is especially crucial that we explore the disproportionate effects of the crisis on women and girls, and the unique and powerful role our women leaders will have in seeking solutions based in equity, dignity, respect, and a belief in the value of diversity. It has been nearly 20 years since the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1325, which reaffirms the important role of women in the prevention and resolution of conflict in negotiations, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and more. We know that women play a crucial role in peace building, and we look forward to expanding their participation in our communities and societies. With all of these issues facing us, it is my hope that today will serve as a time for thoughtful, fact-based discourse and mindful examination of all which lie at the heart of the Albright Institute's work and Wellesley's mission. To our many esteemed panelists who have come from all over the world to be with us today, we thank you. As leading scholars and authorities, practitioners, we look to you to provide us with the multidisciplinary perspectives we greatly need: historical, cultural, sociologic, scientific, political, and economic. Excuse me for 1 second. Discourse in this country faces a crisis driven by fake news, the erosion of the power of fact-based analysis and research, and the dismissal of the relevance of historical and scientific knowledge. Today's panels will serve as a testament to the to the power and the possibility of collective discernment, evidence-based argument, rigor, and civil dialogue. Among our presenters are some of our world-class faculty who inspire our students and who prepare them to become future leaders and change makers. Thank you for being here and adding your voices and expertise. I want to thank the Albright Institute staff and its incredibly hardworking and visionary leadership, its faculty director, Takis Metaxas, and its director, Joanne Murray. And I also do want to recognize Joe Joyce, the Institute's first faculty director, who is here with us today. And I want to extend a special thank you to our keynote speaker this morning, the first woman to become Secretary of State, the highest ranking woman in the U.S. history, in terms of our government, when confirmed in the role in 1997. Today, she is an international icon, and I think we would all agree with that, whose leadership is bold and thoughtful, whose vision is forward-thinking and informed by history. She is a woman of deep principle and as fearless as they come. She is a globally renowned advocate for women, women's education, equality, and a guiding light for women leaders. I'm actually going to qualify that, for leaders everywhere. Her distinguished service to this country was recognized by President Obama in 2012 when he bestowed upon her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Secretary Albright is a dear friend to the college and a devoted Wellesley alumna, class of 1959, whose legacy can be seen in the 8 years of Albright Fellows, who were already changing the world in ways that we could not have imagined. I am personally grateful for her deep commitment to Wellesley and to her partnership. It is a true honor to introduce to you today's keynote speaker for the 2017 Albright Institute Public Dialogue, Madeleine Korbel Albright.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you. Thank you. President Johnson, thank you so very, very much for your kind words and for your truly sensational leadership of the best college on earth. And we are very, very lucky to have you. I am grateful as well for your very strong support of the Albright Institute, which is, as has been said, sponsoring today's public dialogue on the global refugee crisis. The theme of our discussion is From Exodus to Action, and in keeping with that theme, we are making it our goal to not only call attention to the scope of the current challenge, but also to press for a paradigm shift in how the international community responds to the needs of refugees. And thanks to the extraordinary efforts of Joanne Murray and her team, we have assembled an all-star lineup of panelists from whom we will hear shortly. All the participants today bring with them a range of perspectives shaped by their personal experience with all these issues, and I'd like to begin by sharing mine. As many of you know, I was born in Czechoslovakia, just 2 years before Hitler's troops marched into the capital city of Prague. My father was a Czechoslovak diplomat and a strong supporter of democracy. And so when the Nazis marched in, my parents and I fled to England, which is where we spent the Second World War, as refugees. I was 8 when the war ended, and we returned to Prague, but then a couple of years later, the communists took over, and my family was once again forced into exile, this time into a new and welcoming land, the United States of America. I'll never forget sailing into New York Harbor for the first time and beholding the Statue of Liberty with the famous words of Emma Lazarus inscribed upon its pedestal. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." It was Armistice Day, November 11th, 1948, when we arrived in New York. I remember being very excited, but also a little scared, because I didn't know whether after leaving my old home I could truly find another one. We lived on Long Island for a while, and I went to elementary school there with my very oldest friend, Winnie Freund, Wellesley, class of '59. After that, we moved to Colorado, where my father became a professor at the University of Denver, where I made it my mission to become a bona fide American teenager. That meant really losing my very British accent, reading mountains of comic books, and begging my mother, without success, to let me have sleepovers, a concept that was hard to explain. In Denver, I tried very hard to fit in, but it was not the simplest issue there because of my very foreign family. And my mother was a completely delightful nut who managed to entertain people by reading their palms at dinner parties, sitting next to a man while his wife was at the other side and telling him that he would have many affairs. My father wanted to fit in Colorado, which meant fishing. The only problem was that he always fished in a coat and tie. And I tried very hard not to appear foreign, but it wasn't simple. But everything changed when I arrived at this spectacular campus freshman year, 1955. I was surrounded by new friends, great professors, stimulating courses, and I was free from the watchful eye of my parents. I had a much easier time with a few exceptions. For example, early in my first semester, I lived down in Homestead, and I was startled to be summoned by bells when all of a sudden it was said, for the hearing of everybody, Madeleine, Korbel, please come down. There are some alumni here who want to take you to Boston to show you what the American girl wears. I came down in the uniform of the day, Bermuda shorts, Shetland sweater, and a circle pin. I was thoroughly American and proud of it. For all the opportunities that came with our move to the United States, including the opportunity to come to Wellesley, my family and I have always been incredibly grateful. In fact, my mother used to call me every 4th of July, making sure that her grandchildren were singing patriotic songs. And as for my father, he always talked about the following contrast. He said that when we were in England during the war, people were very kind. They'd say, "We're so sorry your country's been taken over by a terrible dictator. You're welcome here. What can we do to help you, and when are you going home?" When we came to the United States, people said, "We're so sorry your country's been taken over by a terrible system. You're welcome here. What can we do to help you, and when will you become a citizen?" And he said that is what made the United States different from other countries. People always ask me what was the most important thing that ever happened to me. It was a day between my sophomore and junior year here when I became a naturalized American. And one of the special privileges I've had in recent years has been to participate in ceremonies where our newest citizens are sworn in. I can't actually swear people in because I'm not an officer of the law, but I can give them their naturalization certificates, and I say, this is exactly the same piece of paper I have. It's the most valuable piece you will ever get. And at one of these occasions, I remember someone coming up to me later, and he said, "Isn't it incredible that a refugee could get his citizenship papers from the Secretary of State?" And I said, "Isn't it incredible when a refugee can be Secretary of State?" Although it's accurate to describe me as a refugee, I have always tried to make clear that my family was not a hardship case. We didn't have to escape through barbed wire. We didn't have much money, but we did come on diplomatic passports, so I can't pretend to know what it's like to endure even a fraction of what the roughly 21 million refugees worldwide are going through today. But I do know what it's like to be uprooted and to be unable to return home, and I cannot imagine what it would have been like to be turned away at the door, or even worse, treated as a potential threat. Yet that is precisely how our new administration is treating those fleeing from civil war and terrorism in the Middle East today. We now have a president who suggests that America must choose between protecting our security and playing our historic role as a place of refuge for the persecuted. But that is not a choice we need to make. We can do both. And the reason we can is that we have a rigorous and proven process to resettle and integrate refugees. It's a program whose success has made us a model for the rest of the world, and it is a program that strengthens national security by supporting allies and partners that are struggling to host large numbers of refugees, and by refuting the narrative of Daesh that Muslims are not welcome in the United States. Refugee admissions and immigration more generally are also as an economic necessity for our country because our populations are aging and because immigrants bring skills that are in great demand. So for the president who wants to deliver economic growth and solve problems in the Middle East, shutting the door on refugees is a big mistake, huge. Huge. But that is what President Trump appears determined to do. As you all know, one of his first actions as president was to sign an executive order which suspended the entire refugee program and halted all travel from 7 Muslim-majority countries. As soon as the order began circulating, I spoke out against it in the strongest possible terms for 3 reasons. First, I thought it was a cruel measure that represented a stark departure from America's core values. Second, I believed the order would directly harm our security by exacerbating the humanitarian crisis and by affirming the narrative of Daesh that there is a perpetual struggle between the Muslim world and the West. It would put our troops in Iraq at risk and break faith with those Iraqis who had supported our efforts on the ground. And third, the order was based on fear, not facts. Refugees are already vetted more intensively than any other category of traveler, with a vetting process that consists of more than 20 steps. And no refugee and no immigrant from any of the 7 Muslim-majority countries affected by the order has ever carried out a fatal terrorist attack in the United States. The executive order was clearly ill-conceived and poorly executed, and as a result, it did not withstand legal scrutiny. I was proud to join a group of national security officials who filed a legal brief challenging the order, and I was heartened when the courts struck it down. But now, as you all have heard, the Trump administration appears to be on the verge of issuing a new order. And there have been disturbing reports that the White House has been pressuring the intelligence community to come up with evidence to back up its claims that refugees and immigrants pose a threat. Even as we await the president's next move, we cannot wait to stand up for our values. And that's why I'm so pleased by the way in which people across the country have mobilized to show support for immigrants and solidarity with refugees, and I would like to especially commend the Wellesley community for its activism on this issue. Still, no one can be satisfied with where we are today, because the truth is that this is a multi-front effort, and it's not just the United States that is failing to do its part. The scale of this crisis has stretched our humanitarian system beyond its capacity, and the global response has fallen short of what is necessary. Take the example of the UN's Consolidated Humanitarian Appeal for 2016. Despite record financing levels from the humanitarian community, it still faced a 40% shortfall, and the world filled only a fraction of refugee resettlement slots that were needed. There are many countries in the region and in Europe that could and should do more. But having traveled abroad recently, I can tell you how impossible it is for us to lecture countries on the need for a more compassionate response when we are instituting a travel ban of our own and we're not even taking enough people before that. The truth is that we are empowering other countries to turn a blind eye to refugees, and the result will simply be more desperation, more destabilization, and more threats to our own security interests. Yet in spite of this, many in the United States still seem to believe that we can insulate ourselves from the world's problems and leave it to other countries to sort the crisis out. The idea that we can stand aside or wait for others to act is an illusion mocked by the lessons of history. And for that reason, today's public dialogue is vitally important. It's an opportunity for experts and practitioners to come together to discuss how we can summon both the public and private sectors to take a fundamentally different approach to the crisis, one that sees refugees not as a burden or a threat, but as an opportunity. Because the truth is that refugees have made and will continue to make extraordinary contributions to our society as doctors and lawyers and activists, and yes, even as Secretary of State. And I have no doubt that this current generation of refugees could make our country stronger and greater than ever, so as long as we don't make the terrible mistake of shutting them out. As America's Secretary of State, I was privileged to represent my country in nations on every continent. I had many meetings with high officials in fancy offices, but these were not the meetings that I remember the most. The people I will not forget are those I encountered in camps and rehabilitation centers, in health clinics and safe havens for battered women and girls. In every corner of the world, I have resolved I saw resolve in the eyes of men, women, and girls who were determined to fight for their dignity, for their rights, and for their children, and who needed a helping hand. Back in Washington, I was asked different questions. Why should we care about people in faraway places with unpronounceable names? I was assured that the task was hopeless, that we couldn't afford to undertake it, and that we had too many other problems about which to worry. And I replied that we had learned over and over again that the gravest dangers to world security have deep roots. I believe deeply if the developed world did more to help the deserving, especially refugees, we would see people everywhere become citizens and contributors. But providing this help is not the job of governments alone or any one organization. It's a collective responsibility that can only be met by government officials, advocacy groups, NGOs, and communities, by all of you joining together as we are doing today. So in closing, let me once again thank all of the participants in today's public dialogue and for all that you are doing now and will continue to do in the future. And I thank you very, very much for your kind attention, and I now look forward to answering some of your questions. And since I'm no longer in the government, I will actually be able to answer your questions.